Everything you were taught about the birth of civilization is built on one assumption. That first came farming, then villages, then cities. And only then, once humans had food, walls, and time, did we build temples to our gods. In 1994, a hill in southeastern Turkey broke that order completely. Beneath this hill stood a temple, carved, towering, deliberate. It was built 11,600 years ago, before farming, before writing, before the wheel, before pottery. 6,000 years before Stonehenge. 7,000 years before the pyramids. It shouldn't exist, and yet, here it is. The locals called it Göbekli Tepe, Potbelly Hill. For generations, farmers ploughed around the odd stones poking through the soil, assuming they were nothing. A medieval graveyard, maybe. In 1963, archaeologists glanced at it and moved on. If lost temples and buried origins pull you in, stay with this story. The strangest part is still under the hill. Then, in 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt came to take a second look. He picked up a piece of flint, turned it over, and felt his pulse quicken. This wasn't medieval, this was Stone Age. And the stones weren't natural at all. He would later say, "In 1 minute, I knew that either I left this place, or I would spend the rest of my life here." He stayed for the rest of his life. What Schmidt's team pulled from the earth defied belief. Enormous T-shaped pillars, some 16 feet tall, weighing up to 10 tons, arranged in rings, and carved into them with breathtaking skill, were animals. Foxes, scorpions, vultures, snakes pouring down the stone like water. Remember who made this? Hunter-gatherers. People with no metal tools, no domesticated animals, no farms. They shaped 10-ton blocks of limestone with stone, and they raised them upright on a hilltop. And the pillars aren't just decorated. Many have arms carved down their sides, hands meeting at the front. They aren't walls. They're bodies. They're beings, looking out at whoever stood between them. This was a sacred place. A temple, built by people who supposedly weren't capable of building anything. Here's where Göbekli Tepe stops being an old ruin and becomes something that rewrites the human story. The old theory said civilization needed farming first. You settle down, you grow surplus food, and only then can you afford to build monuments. But Göbekli Tepe came before farming, which means the order may be backwards. Schmidt's radical idea was this: maybe it wasn't farming that created religion. Maybe it was religion that created farming. To build this place, you needed hundreds of people working together. You needed to feed them. And some of the earliest domesticated wheat on earth has been traced to the mountains, just visible from this very hill. The temple may have come first, and the need to feed its builders may have pushed humanity to plant the first fields. Faith, in other words, may have invented the farm. Now look closer at those carvings, because one pillar here is so strange it has earned its own name. The Vulture Stone. A great bird spreads its wings beneath a hovering disc, like a sun, or a falling fire. Around it, a scorpion, a headless man. Rows of symbols no one alive can read. A few researchers made a daring claim that this is a date written in stone, a record of a comet striking the Earth 11,000 years ago, as the world plunged into a sudden, brutal cold. It's a thrilling idea, and one the site's own archaeologists firmly reject, warning that we're forcing our modern constellations onto Stone Age art that meant something else entirely. But that's the haunting part. We are standing before a message, carved with enormous care, and we have utterly lost the language to read it. And the people who raised these stones did something else on this hill. Something that still unsettles the archaeologists who found it. They kept the dead. Among the ruins lay fragments of human skulls, and 3 of them had been deliberately carved. Long, deep grooves cut along the bone, one pierced with a hole as if meant to hang from a cord. No buried bodies, just skulls, marked and displayed. Researchers call it a skull cult, a ritual of the dead 11,000 years old, that we are still only guessing at. Whatever this place was, it was not a village. It was a house of the sacred and of the dead. Now the mystery deepens. Because Göbekli Tepe wasn't abandoned, it was buried. Around 10,000 years ago, the builders deliberately filled their own temple with rubble and earth. By hand. They entombed it. And that burial is the only reason it survived so perfectly. Why would people spend generations raising a temple, then bury it on purpose? We don't know. Maybe the beliefs changed. Maybe it was an offering. Maybe they were hiding it. The people who could answer left no writing. Because writing wouldn't be invented for another 6,000 years. And here's the detail that keeps archaeologists awake at night. We've barely scratched it. Geophysical surveys suggest there may be as many as 20 of these stone enclosures still buried under that hill. After decades of digging, only a fraction has been uncovered. The rest is still down there, in the dark, waiting. And then came the discovery that changed everything again. Göbekli Tepe is not alone. Just across the hills, archaeologists began uncovering its sisters, a dozen sites now known as the Tepeler, the Stone Hills. At one of them, Karahan Tepe, they dug out a chamber carved straight from the bedrock, lined with pillars, and a human face emerging from the rock wall, staring back. This was never one strange temple. It was an entire lost world of them, and the excavations have barely begun. Klaus Schmidt died in 2014, with most of his temple still hidden beneath his feet. He gave his life to one hill, and even he never saw the whole of it. So what does Göbekli Tepe really tell us? That our ancestors were not simple. That 11,000 years ago, people with nothing but stone and belief looked up at the sky, felt something vast, and decided to build a monument to it before they ever built a home. We like to think civilization began with the practical, with food and walls and survival. But the oldest temple on Earth suggests something stranger and more human. That before we learned to feed ourselves, we learned to gather, to wonder, and to build something greater than we were. The temple that shouldn't exist is still mostly buried. And the question it asks is simple. If everything we knew about our beginning was wrong, what else is still waiting under the hill?